A poor girl gave her food to a homeless man and let him spend the night in her small apartment. The next day, it turned out that he wasn't just a homeless man, but one of the richest people in the city, and the way he thanked her surprised everyone. Rain clung to the rusted edges of the bus shelter, dripping like clockwork onto the back of May Linton's neck as she leaned forward, shielding the paper bag on her lap. Inside was a lukewarm lentil soup and a heel of bread she hadn't been able to finish during her own break. Across from her, a man sat hunched in a tattered coat 2 sizes too large, his face obscured by a hood, his hands bared despite the cold. The skin around his knuckles was cracked, raw. "Here," she said, placing the bag beside him without looking. "I don't like throwing food away." He didn't reach for it at first. Just turned slightly, revealing sharp cheekbones under grime and a slow blink that didn't match the rest of him. He looked alert. Not the dazed, vacant kind of poor soul she often passed during her shifts at the diner. This man was watching her. "Why?" he asked. "Because you look like you need it," May answered, suddenly embarrassed. She didn't owe him an explanation. "I meant, why are you helping me?" "Because no one else will." She stood, brushing crumbs off her second-hand coat, ready to disappear back into the shadows of the city. It wasn't the first time she'd handed off a meal, or a blanket. May had grown up watching her mother do the same in their neighborhood near the shipyards, but this one felt different. This one looked back. "Do you have somewhere to go?" she asked, against her better judgment. The man studied her for a beat, then shook his head once. She glanced toward the dim stretch of road behind her, then back at him. "I live 3 blocks from here. Couch is clean. You can sleep, shower. That's it." Silence stretched between them, the kind that could tip either way. Then he stood. Not slowly. Not like someone weakened by the street. He moved with the grace of someone who hadn't always been hungry. She noticed, and it stayed with her. May regretted the decision twice before they even reached her building. Once when she realized how tall he was, broad too, in a way that made the space around him seem smaller, and again when he paused outside her door, hand resting lightly against a frame as if reading something in the wood. "My name's May," she offered, awkwardly. He looked at her for the first time without the hood. His eyes were piercing blue, the kind that seemed out of place on someone dressed in decay. "Nathan," he said. "Nathan Cole." The name meant nothing to her then. By the time she woke the next morning, he'd cleaned her dishes, folded the laundry from her broken dryer rack, and repaired the loose leg on her coffee table. There was a note by the sink in precise, slanted handwriting. "Thank you. You didn't have to, but you did. I'll pay it back. I always do." She didn't see him again for 3 days. But on the 4th, a man in a crisp black coat appeared at the diner, ordered a plain coffee, and left a $500 tip folded beneath the receipt. The name on the card? Nathan Cole. She ran outside, apron still dusted with flour, but he was already halfway down the block, hands in his pockets, head low. It wasn't until that night that her coworker pointed at the business section of the discarded newspaper and said, "Isn't that the guy who tipped you?" May stared at the headline. "Reclusive Tech CEO Nathan Cole makes surprise return to public eye after 2-year absence." She blinked. The face was clean-shaven, the suit tailored, the posture proud, but the eyes were the same. And she had let him sleep on her couch. She didn't tell anyone. Not then. Because something told her the story wasn't over. It hadn't even begun. May didn't sleep that night. The article lay folded beside her on the kitchen table, now creased at the edges from how many times she'd read it. Nathan Cole, CEO of Ardent Systems. Went public at 32. Disappeared at 37. No official statements, no scandals, just silence. And now, without warning, re-emerging in her life like a ghost who never belonged to it. She replayed every detail of their brief encounter, the way he moved, the way he spoke. He hadn't acted like a man used to being seen. No arrogance, no demands. Just that strange, quiet competence. Fixing the coffee table, folding laundry like it was a meditation. She hadn't imagined that, had she? By morning, the paper was gone from the table. She walked to work in the drizzle, steps faster than usual, as though the city might whisper something she'd missed the first time. But the diner was the same. The regulars nursed their bitterness through coffee. The kitchen hissed and steamed. Her boss, Maria, yelled in Spanish at a supplier over the phone. The world didn't stop just because a man with a billion-dollar name had once been on her couch. May poured coffee, scribbled orders, wiped down the same Formica tables. At 10:17 a.m., he returned. Not in a suit. Not like the photo. Just jeans, a gray sweatshirt, and a stillness that unsettled her more than his absence had. He chose the corner booth. The same one he'd sat at when he left the tip. She brought him coffee without asking. Plain, just like last time. You saw the paper, he said after a pause. I did. He sipped slowly. You're not asking why I disappeared. No. Why? She folded her arms. Because if you wanted me to know, you'd tell me. And if you don't, it's not my business. He nodded, eyes scanning the diner like he was trying to memorize something. Most people ask. I'm not most people. No, he agreed, and there was something in the way he said it, relief, maybe. She hesitated. But I do have questions. He smiled faintly. I thought you might. Why were you sleeping at a bus stop? Nathan exhaled through his nose, gaze distant. Because I needed to see what it felt like. To have nothing. No name. No power. Just the cold. That sounds like punishment. It was. She waited, but he said nothing else. Instead, he reached into his coat and placed a thick envelope on the table. Her name was written across the front in the same slanted handwriting as the note he'd left in her apartment. I don't want money, she said immediately. It's not money, he replied. She opened it anyway. Inside were documents. Pages upon pages of them. A contract. Deeds. A business license. What is this? A lease transfer, he said. There's a building on Weiler Avenue. Old bookstore. Structurally sound, but vacant for years. I bought it 5 years ago, planning to tear it down. Never did. She stared at the papers. I put it in your name. She looked up sharply. Why? Because you gave me something no one else had. No agenda. No ask. You treated me like a person when you thought I was a beggar. That matters. May shook her head. You don't even know me. Maybe not, he said quietly. But I know how rare that kind of kindness is. It's the only kind that isn't transactional. The kind that fixes something. She glanced down at the documents again. What do you want in return? He stood. Nothing. But if you open it, if you make something there, make it yours. Then he left, just like the first time. May didn't move for a full 5 minutes. Maria finally called her back to the counter, and she shoved the envelope into her bag without a word. She spent the rest of the day distracted, forgetting orders, letting coffee overflow onto saucers. When her shift ended, she didn't go home. She walked straight to Weiler Avenue. The building was exactly as he'd said. Brick facade, green painted door, dusty windows revealing rows of empty shelves. The ghost of a bookstore. There was a handwritten note on the inside of the glass, scrawled in permanent marker. All stories start with a choice. She touched the handle. Something shifted in her chest. A possibility she hadn't dared let herself imagine, not since she dropped out of community college to care for her brother after their mother died. Not since she'd started waitressing just to cover rent, convinced her dreams were too expensive for someone like her. But now this wasn't a handout. It was a challenge. When she returned home, the envelope lay open on her table. Beside it, she placed an old notebook, the one she used to write in when she thought she might someday open a place like that. A bookstore with coffee, maybe a corner for poetry readings, a place where kids could read on beanbags and people like her could remember they mattered. Nathan Cole hadn't just given her a building. He'd dared her to remember the kind of woman she'd once wanted to be. And for the first time in years, May Linton thought maybe, just maybe, she still could be. The building on Weiler Avenue smelled of dust, old wood, and forgotten sunlight. May stood in the center of it all, surrounded by the skeletons of bookshelves and scattered leaves that had snuck in through cracks in the windows. The key had arrived the morning after their last meeting, left in a plain envelope with no note, just a return address she recognized, the law firm that had filed the lease transfer. She didn't touch anything at first. Just walked the length of the space, palms trailing the backs of shelves, listening to the creak of the old floorboards beneath her boots. It was like entering someone else's memory, vivid, but not yet her own. The name had come to her during a shift change at the diner, while wiping down a countertop stained with coffee and ketchup. Second story. She liked the way it sounded, like the next chapter, like the place where everything changed. By the end of that week, she had notebooks filled with plans, sketches, supplier lists, grant applications. Her neighbor Diana helped her patch the roof. A friend from her late mother's church offered paint and a second-hand espresso machine. Word got around quickly. People remembered May, not because she'd ever had money, but because she'd shown up. When someone's kid went missing after school, she was the one who helped search. When the bakery closed down, she was the one who found the owner's cat. In a neighborhood bruised by rising rents and falling wages, May Linton had quietly become the kind of person others rooted for. The space transformed slowly. May painted the shelves herself, soft green, like sea glass. She patched drywall and chose each light fixture like it was a promise. The sign above the door came last, hand-carved, simple. Second story. No tagline. No logo. Just the name. The kind that made people pause. It was only on opening day that Nathan returned. He didn't say anything when he entered, just glanced around slowly, his expression unreadable. He wore the same coat as before, though the hoodie was gone. Underneath, a navy sweater, soft and expensive, but understated. May met him at the back of the shop, her hands smudged with graphite from the last batch of inventory tags. "I didn't think you'd come," she said. "I wanted to see what you built." She nodded toward the shelves. "It's not finished. Neither are you." She narrowed her eyes. "That sounds like something someone says before leaving again." Nathan's mouth twisted, not quite a smile, not quite a frown. "I don't plan to leave this time." She blinked. "What does that mean?" He looked around the room. "It means I want to help. I didn't ask for help. I know. And I don't want to owe you. You don't. But you're offering something. I'm offering presents." May crossed her arms. "You're a billionaire, Nathan. You don't get to play humble just because you changed coats." He didn't flinch. "That's fair. But I wasn't pretending. I just..." He stopped, exhaled, and tried again. "There's something that happens when people find out who I am. They look at me differently. Start calculating. You didn't. And I think that's the first time in years I felt like a person." She said nothing. So he continued. "I'm building something, too. Quietly. Off the books. A project that's not for shareholders or news cycles. It's messy. Human. I want to make space for people like you, builders, not takers. I want this to be the first one." Her brow furrowed. "You mean a franchise?" He shook his head. "I mean a legacy. One where money isn't the story. People are." May turned away. The espresso machine hissed quietly behind her. She wiped her hands on her apron and stared out the window at the street where a little girl in red boots stomped puddles. "You could have done all this yourself," she said after a long silence. "Why me?" Nathan paused before answering. "Because you didn't flinch." She looked back at him. "And if I fail?" "You won't. But if I do? Then you'll try again." May studied his face. For all his wealth, he looked like someone who had nothing to prove anymore, just something to make right. At last, she extended her hand. "We open officially on Monday," she said. "You want to help? Show up at 7. Bring a broom." He took her hand, warm and steady. "I'll be here." And for the first time, May believed him. Because sometimes the richest man in the room wasn't the one with the money. It was the one who finally chose to come home. Nathan arrived before sunrise, just like he said he would. The street lamps were still on, and fog hung low over Weiler Avenue as he unlocked the front door with the key she'd given him the night before. May was already inside, hair tied in a hasty knot, sleeves rolled up. She didn't greet him with fanfare, just handed him a broom and nodded toward a pile of construction dust near the register. They worked in silence at first. There was a rhythm to it, one Nathan found strangely comforting. In his other life, problems were solved through meetings and capital. Here, they were solved with elbow grease and the right brand of wood polish. "You ever sweep a floor before?" May asked around 6:15, smirking. Nathan looked down at his handiwork. "Let's just say my resume is light on janitorial experience." She tossed him a rag. "You missed a spot." He wiped it. "Still hiring?" She raised an eyebrow. "Trial basis." By 9 a.m., they were ready. The opening wasn't grand. There were no reporters, no cameras. Just neighbors, curious passers-by, and a small handwritten sign, "Now open. All stories welcome." The first customer was a boy no older than 10, tugging his grandmother by the hand. He made a beeline for the children's section and gasped when he found a copy of the Phantom Tollbooth. "My dad used to read this to me," the grandmother whispered. "Before he got sick." May handed her a second copy, newer, crisp. "This one's on the house. For the next story." Nathan watched the exchange from behind the counter. Something shifted in his chest. Not the sharp ache of guilt he'd grown used to, but something quieter. A release. The day passed in a blur of coffee orders and book recommendations. People lingered longer than expected. Some didn't buy anything at all but left with the kind of expression that said they'd come back. It was only after they closed that May asked, "So, what happened to you?" Nathan didn't pretend to misunderstand. He leaned against a freshly painted bookshelf, arms crossed, expression unreadable. 2 years ago," he began slowly, "my CTO, Aaron Hart, resigned without warning. We'd built Arden together. He was brilliant. Paranoid. Ethical in a way I wasn't." May sat on the edge of the counter, eyes on him. "He'd discovered something," Nathan continued. "A vulnerability in one of our machine learning datasets. Something small, but with implications. If exploited, it could be used to manipulate biometric profiles, facial recognition software, voice stress analysis, subtly, invisibly. Especially in developing regions. Governments were interested. Very interested." He ran a hand through his hair. "I ignored it. Signed the contracts. Told myself we'd fix it later. But Aaron didn't want later. He wanted out. So he left. Quietly. I thought it was over. But it wasn't," May guessed. Nathan shook his head. 3 months later, he was found dead in his apartment. Overdose. Officially. And unofficially? He'd been meeting with a journalist. One I didn't even know about until after the autopsy. The files were encrypted. She's never published them. But the day after his death, I walked out. Left Arden. Took nothing." May was silent. "I spent a year moving between countries. Places where no one knew me. I tried to disappear. And I nearly did." "Why come back?" she asked. "Because guilt doesn't decay," Nathan said quietly. "It compounds. And eventually you either drown or surface." He looked around the bookstore. "This place is the surface." She nodded. "And the company?" "My lawyers still think I'm having a nervous breakdown. But the board, they want me back. They need my name more than they hate my silence." "So what will you do?" He hesitated. "I'll go back." May's eyes narrowed. "Why?" "Because I'm not finished." She stood. "You walk into that boardroom again, they'll try to own you. Not if I walk in with something they can't control." He reached into his coat and pulled out a flash drive. "This has the original vulnerability reports. The emails. The contracts. Everything Aaron tried to protect. You've had this all along? No. I only got it a month ago. From the journalist. And you trust her? She trusted me. Said it wasn't her story to tell anymore. May folded her arms. So now what? You take them down? No, Nathan said. I build something better. But first, I clean house. There was a silence between them. Not uncomfortable. Measured. You want my advice? She said at last. Always. Tell the truth. And bring your broom. Nathan laughed, low and genuine. Deal. As they locked up for the night, May paused under the glow of the storefront lights. You were wrong about one thing, she said. Oh? You said this was the surface. She looked around. It's not. It's the foundation. Nathan looked at her then, really looked. And for the first time since his disappearance, he believed it. The boardroom hadn't changed. Same long mahogany table, same skyline view, same chairs arranged like a tribunal. But when Nathan Cole walked in that morning, flanked only by silence and a leather briefcase, something in the air shifted. Eyes turned. Some startled. Some cold. Lena March, acting CEO in his absence, stood at the head of the table. Her voice was level, her smile clipped. Well? The ghost returns. Nathan set the briefcase on the table. Nice to see you too, Lena. They didn't offer him a seat. He didn't wait for one. I'm not here to ask permission, he said. I'm here to clean up what we buried. Murmurs stirred among the board members. Gerald Marks, old money and older grudges, cleared his throat. You walked away, Cole. You left this company in limbo. I walked away to keep it from becoming something worse, Nathan said. And now I'm here to finish what I started. He opened the briefcase. Laid out the contents. Printed emails. Contracts. Internal memos. And then, the flash drive. These are Aaron Hart's files, he said. The vulnerability he discovered, the one we monetized without transparency. These documents prove our legal exposure. But more than that, they prove we knew. And we did it anyway. Lena didn't blink. You're threatening us with whistleblower leverage? I'm giving you a choice, Nathan said. We go public ourselves, fix what we can, rebuild what's left, or someone else does it for us, and we burn. Gerald scoffed. You want to blow up the house to save your conscience? No, Nathan said quietly. I want to gut it, pour a new foundation, and build something that won't collapse under its own lies. Lena sat down, finally. And what would that look like? He reached into his coat and pulled out a single sheet of paper. A restructuring plan. Independent audit. Oversight committee with real power. Full transparency to the public about what was collected, how it was used, and where we failed. We admit it. We own it. Gerald leaned back. You'll kill the stock. Better that than kill our soul. Silence. Then Lena spoke, her voice cooler than ice. You want redemption. That's not what companies are built for. No, Nathan said. But people are. He gathered the files, returned them to the briefcase. I'll give you 48 hours. Vote to move forward with the plan, or I walk, and I take the documents to the press. He didn't wait for their response. Just nodded once, turned, and walked out. In the hallway, he leaned against the cold marble wall. For the first time in days, his hands trembled. His phone buzzed. May Linton. How'd it go? Nathan stared at the message, then typed back with deliberate calm. I lit the match. Now we'll see what burns. Back on Weiler Avenue, May was reorganizing the front window of second story when Diana popped in with a bag of donated children's books and 2 cups of coffee. Thought you'd need caffeine, she said. Looks like you didn't sleep. I didn't. Diana leaned against the front counter. You're worried about him. I'm worried about what happens when a man tries to fix the fire from inside the building. Diana sipped her coffee. You like him? May said nothing. You know, Diana added. Most people would have taken the money, sold the building, maybe opened a yoga cafe in Portland. But you did something real. May smiled faintly. I'm not in the business of walking away. That afternoon, she received a delivery. No note. Just a thick envelope and a neatly bound book proposal, titled, The Second Story, How We Rebuild. Author Nathan Cole. She opened the last page. In his familiar handwriting, one line had been added. To the woman who saw me before I remembered how to see myself. That night, she placed the draft in the window beneath the soft glow of the reading lamp, where customers could see it. Outside, the fog rolled in. But the bookstore stayed lit. Nathan didn't sleep. He spent the first night after his ultimatum pacing his apartment. Bare walls, no art, only the low hum of a refrigerator and the sound of the city pressing against the windows. He kept checking the clock, each minute dragging toward a moment he couldn't control. 48 hours to dismantle a machine he'd helped build. He read over the documents again. Every clause he'd once approved with a nod and a handshake. The contracts that turned ethics into optional checkboxes. At 3:27 a.m., he called May. She answered on the second ring, voice rough with sleep. Did you change your mind? No, he said. But I need to hear someone say I'm not insane. There was a long pause. Then, you're not insane, he exhaled. She added, you're just doing the thing most powerful men are terrified to do, taking responsibility. That's supposed to help? Maybe not, she said. But when this is over, you'll still be able to look in a mirror. He smiled, despite himself. Thanks. And Nathan? Yeah? If they come after you, you fight smart. Not proud. He nodded, forgetting for a second she couldn't see him. I will. By the second day, the media had caught wind. Not of the files, those were still buried, but of Nathan's presence at Arden. Tech blogs speculated, a buyout? A coup? A reconciliation? When Lena called him that afternoon, her tone was clipped. We've scheduled a vote. He paused. And? Don't thank me yet, she said. Some of them still want your head. I'm not here to be liked, he replied. Just heard. He arrived at the meeting room 10 minutes early. Dressed simply, no tie, sleeves rolled, no armor. He carried only one item, a black folder marked Public Statement Draft. One by one, board members filtered in. No greetings this time. Just nods. Calculations behind every glance. Lena entered last. Nathan stood. I won't take long, he said. You've read the plan. You've seen the risks. But you haven't seen the people. The ones we impacted. The ones whose trust we shattered. He opened the folder. Read from the prepared draft. Innovation without conscience is a clever form of destruction. I was part of that. I profited from it. And today, I ask this board to do what no algorithm ever will, recognize that human damage can't be debugged. He closed the folder. I'm not asking for perfection. Just a new compass. Lena stared at him. Then gestured to her assistant. We'll vote now. The room went silent. One by one, hands rose. 6. 7. Then 8. Gerald Marks paused, then raised his hand last. Lena lowered hers with a sharp exhale. The motion passes. Full transparency. Full audit. You'll issue the statement? Nathan nodded. By morning. She stood. You just turned this company into a case study. I can live with that, he said. Can you live with what it costs? I already did, he replied. For 2 years. That night, Nathan walked back to second story. The bookstore was closed, but May had left the porch light on. He found her inside, cataloging a new stack of donated books. She looked up. Did they vote? Yes. And? He dropped into the armchair near the window. Unanimous. Transparency begins tomorrow. She stared at him. You look like hell. I feel like I let something die. Maybe you did. she said gently. But some things need to. They sat in silence for a while, the soft ticking of the wall clock the only sound. Eventually, she asked, "So what now?" "I rebuild," Nathan said. "But this time, not alone." May didn't smile. Just nodded once, slow and certain. "Good." Nathan leaned back in the chair, eyes closed. For the first time in years, he didn't feel like a man trying to outrun a shadow. He felt like someone turning to face it. The statement went live at 8 a.m. Arden Systems' homepage transformed overnight from sleek promotional banners to a white screen bearing Nathan's words in stark, black serif. No logos. No PR filters. Just the truth. Within the first hour, 3 national outlets picked up the story. By noon, it was everywhere. Former tech CEO Nathan Cole exposes internal surveillance breach. Whistleblower or reformer? The redemption of Nathan Cole. Arden Systems admits data manipulation, promises transparency. Public response was swift. Mixed. Volatile. Some hailed him as a moral titan. Others called it calculated damage control. Investors panicked. Stocks dipped. Analysts speculated. Hashtags trended. Hashtag Nathan Cole, hashtag Second Story Man, hashtag Arden Amassed. Through it all, Nathan stayed offline. He returned to Second Story instead. May was shelving a collection of poetry when he walked in, wearing the same wool coat, the wear now visible at the cuffs. She looked up. "I saw the headlines." He nodded, setting down a bag of takeout between them. "Thought you might forget to eat." She smirked. "It's comforting that you think I'm the kind of person who forgets food." He eased onto the stool beside the counter, his posture betraying exhaustion. "Feels like being carved open with a blunt knife." "That's how honesty works," she said. "It cuts first, then it frees." He didn't answer right away. Instead, he watched her arrange books, 3 at a time, spines aligned, hands steady. It grounded him in a way no press release ever had. "I need to show you something," he said suddenly. May paused. "Now?" He nodded. They walked 3 blocks north, where the wind curled sharper through the alleyways. At the corner of Fisk and Delaney stood a 2-story building behind scaffolding. Bricks exposed. Windows taped. No sign. No markings. This was going to be Arden's satellite office, Nathan said, unlocking the side entrance with a code. Inside, dust settled on untouched desks. Exposed wiring snaked across the ceiling. But the bones were strong. "I've kept it off the books," he said. "No shareholders. No branding." May tilted her head. "Why are we here?" "Because I want this to be the next project. A real one. Community tech incubator. Not for profit. Local mentorship. Education. You helped me design it." She blinked. "I run a bookstore, Nathan." "You built a lighthouse," he said. "That's rarer." She was quiet for a moment, fingers brushing an empty desk. "And what's in it for you?" "A reason to stay," he said. "And a place to be useful again, without pretending I know everything." May turned to him, expression unreadable. "Don't offer me this if you're still halfway out the door." "I'm not." She studied him. Then, finally, she said, "Then we don't start with buzzwords. We start with people." He smiled. "I hoped you'd say that." That weekend, the building began its transformation. Volunteers arrived, some drawn by the headlines, others by word of mouth. Students. Retired engineers. A single mother named Clara who had once coded for a defense contractor and wanted to teach again. They painted, rewired, repaired. Nathan worked beside them. No speeches. No suits. Just work. By Sunday evening, a child's drawing appeared taped to the front door, a stick figure with wild hair labeled Mr. Fix-It. May laughed when she saw it. "You've been officially demoted from CEO." "Good," Nathan said. "It suits me." They stood side by side, paint smudges on their hands, streetlight catching the last flakes of dust in the air. "You ever think about what comes next?" May asked. Constantly. And I think you're the only part one haven't figured out, he admitted. She looked at him, eyes steady. Then maybe stop trying to solve me. Just be here. He nodded, not as a man who needed to win, but as one learning to stay. And for the first time, Nathan Cole, builder of systems, breaker of silence, stood in something he hadn't designed. Hope. Autumn crept in gently, brushing the city's shoulders with gold and rust. The bookstore smelled of cinnamon and aged paper, and in the afternoons, sunlight spilled through the windows like something spilled by accident, unexpected, welcome, and warm. Second Story had become a landmark. Not because of fame, but because of presence. May arrived every morning before 8, sweeping the stoop, rearranging displays, setting 2 mugs beside the espresso machine, one always for Nathan, whether or not he came. She never asked where he'd been when he missed a day. And he never offered excuses. That was their quiet pact, no performing, just showing up. By late October, the tech space around the corner, nicknamed the Annex by a local middle schooler, was nearly operational. Paint peeled from the corner still, and half the wiring was borrowed from Nathan's previous office renovations, but the rooms had life. Desks mismatched, yes, but filled. Laughter echoing down halls where once there had only been silence. One Thursday, May stood at the front of the Annex with Clara, the ex-defense coder turned instructor, watching a group of teenagers argue over a circuit design. He's different here, Clara said, nodding toward Nathan in the back room, crouched beside a boy with a 3D printer that had jammed mid-run. May followed her gaze. Nathan was laughing, freely, eyes crinkled, sleeves rolled. He is, May admitted. Clara studied her. Did he tell you about the grant offers? What offers? He's been declining them. Big ones? From foundations that want naming rights, media exposure. He told them this wasn't for them. May didn't answer right away. Then she said, I don't think he wants to be seen saving something. Just building it. Clara smiled. You too. That evening, May returned to the bookstore alone. Rain had begun to fall, soft and steady, and she didn't bother turning on the lights. Just curled into the armchair by the window and listened. Half an hour later, the bell over the door chimed. Nathan stepped inside, damp at the collar, carrying a paper bag. Brought soup, he said. From that place you like. Tomato basil? I'm not an amateur, he said, setting it down on the counter. He joined her by the window. No small talk. No summary of his day. Instead, he said quietly, I got a letter from Aaron's sister. May straightened. What did she say? She thanked me. Said she'd been angry for a long time. Said the statement gave her something she didn't think she'd ever have. A name for the hurt. May's voice was soft. That's a rare kind of healing. Nathan nodded. And she sent something else. His journal. I haven't opened it yet. They sat in the dark, listening to the rain tap against the windows, the city muffled beyond the glass. Eventually May spoke. You're still carrying it, aren't you? All of it. You will for a while. He didn't reply. Just leaned back, eyes closed. Sometimes, she added, we don't get to let go. We just learn how to carry it differently. He looked at her, the curve of her silhouette against the glass soft and familiar. How do you carry yours? He asked. She didn't answer. Just reached into her coat and pulled out a folded piece of paper. He recognized it immediately, the original deed to the bookstore. The one he'd signed over in silence. She unfolded it and laid it flat between them. I never filed this, she said. He blinked. What? I kept it in my kitchen drawer. Something about it didn't feel right. Not then. You never owned it? I do now, she said. I filed it last week. Why now? Because I wanted to know I'd earned it. Not that someone gave it to me to fix a ghost. His chest tightened. You did earn it. From day one. I know that now, she said quietly. And I needed you to know I didn't take it lightly. They sat in silence again. Then Nathan reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded card. He handed it to her. Opening night, November 10th, Annex Community Showcase. May read the line, then smiled. You're really doing it. We are. She looked up. You want me to come? I want you to introduce it. Her eyebrows rose. Me? You're the story everyone needs to hear. The one that doesn't come with code or funding. Just choice. She considered. Then nodded. All right. But I'm not wearing a dress. Pity, he said, half smiling. She bumped his shoulder with hers. And in the hush that followed, they let the silence mean something else entirely. It wasn't love. Not yet. But it was something sturdy. A foundation. And that, they both knew, was the only place from which anything lasting could ever grow. The annex was unrecognizable. Where bare brick and scuffed flooring had once made the space feel like a construction site, now it hummed with light and motion. Rows of laptops, hand-assembled by volunteers. Walls lined with posters detailing upcoming workshops. A bulletin board labeled community ideas overflowing with handwritten notes. No corporate logos. No VIP seating. Just long tables, plastic chairs, and stories waiting to be told. May arrived 15 minutes early. She wore dark jeans, boots scuffed at the toe, and a forest green sweater she'd found in a thrift shop 3 years ago and never stopped loving. Her hair was pulled back in a low knot. Practical. Unassuming. But the room still shifted slightly when she walked in. Nathan noticed. He was mid-conversation with a boy named Jordan, a high school senior who had taught himself Python and now ran the Annex's after-school coding club. When Nathan looked up and saw her, he smiled, the easy kind, the one he only wore when she was near. You're early, he said, walking over. I had to mentally prepare. She deadpanned. You know how I feel about microphones. There's no microphone, he said. Just a small stage and 37 folding chairs. She gave him a look. You counted? I was nervous. He offered her a clipboard. She waved it off. No script. Still May Linton, he said, half in admiration, half in awe. As guests began trickling in, students, parents, retired engineers, curious neighbors, May stood near the coffee station, her hands curled around a mug. No one called her the bookstore woman anymore. Here, they knew her name, her presence, her story. At 6:05, Nathan walked onto the platform they'd built from spare pallets and plywood. He tapped the side of a music stand, clearing his throat. Thank you for coming, he said. I'm Nathan Cole. Some of you know me from the papers. Some of you only know the work we've done here. Both versions are true. A few chuckles. A few nods. I've spent most of my adult life building systems. Things meant to scale, expand, replicate. But I forgot how to build something you could actually stand in. Something that gives more than it takes. He paused. Then gestured to May, who stood just off stage, unmoving. But I didn't do this alone. And I wouldn't have tried if not for someone who reminded me that integrity isn't just what you say, it's what you sustain. Please welcome May Linton. May stepped forward. No notes. No preamble. Just this. When Nathan gave me the bookstore, he thought he was offering a second chance. What he didn't realize was, he'd given himself one too. This, she gestured around the room, isn't charity. It's proof that no one is too far gone. That building better doesn't require power. Just persistence. She let the words sit. Then added quietly, this place, like any good story, started with a choice. Applause. Not thunderous, but real. After the crowd dispersed, and the chairs were stacked, and the coffee cooled, Nathan found her outside, leaning against the brick wall, face lifted to the stars. He joined her. They stood like that for a while. No one watching. No one waiting. I was wrong, he said. About what? There was a microphone. She laughed. Then softer. I meant what I said. I know. And I'm still not sure what comes next. I don't need you to be, he said. I just need you to keep showing up. She turned to him, eyes steady. Then I will. And that night, under a sky stretched with silence and soft streetlight, two people who had once been strangers and burdens to their own lives found something neither had planned for. A second story? Not a romance, not yet. But something better. A beginning they had chosen for themselves. The city moved on. As it always does, indifferent, relentless. But in the small corner of it where Weiler Avenue met Delaney Street, something stayed. A stillness in the noise. A light that hadn't flickered out. Winter came early that year. The bookstore windows fogged before noon, and the heater clanked in protest against the cold. May adjusted displays in fingerless gloves, never bothering to replace the aging thermostat. It made the books feel more alive, somehow, like breath steamed into the air from stories too warm to stay silent. Nathan stopped sleeping in his apartment. He didn't say it aloud, and May never asked. But his coat hung behind the counter most days, and his toothbrush appeared in the bathroom drawer one morning. At some point, there was soup simmering on the stove before she got home. Music playing low. A familiarity that neither of them named. It wasn't domestic. It was necessary. The kind of togetherness built not from declarations, but from the slow, unwavering return to the same place. Again and again. One Sunday evening, May returned from the library's used book sale with 3 heavy boxes in the trunk of her car. Nathan met her at the curb. They carried the boxes in together, unpacking them without speaking. At the bottom of the last one was a worn copy of East of Eden. Nathan held it up. You love this one. She looked up from where she knelt, sorting hardcovers. I do. Because it's about redemption? No, she said, brushing hair from her face. Because it's about choice. And consequence. And how sometimes trying again means more than getting it right. He nodded, understanding that more now than he ever had. Later that night, after the store was closed, and the lights were low, and the silence was thick with everything they hadn't said, Nathan stood in the doorway of the stockroom. I'm selling Arden, he said. May looked up from her desk. What? I'm meeting with a buyer next week. They'll take the systems, the patents. But the name, the brand, I'm retiring it. She closed her notebook slowly. You're really letting go. It's time. She didn't ask what it would mean for his future. Or how much the deal would bring. She only asked, Are you scared? He paused. Terrified. She stood, walked over, and placed her palm lightly on his chest, over the heart that had, finally, learned to beat without a script. Good, she said. That means you're still becoming. 3 weeks later, in a modest conference room in Midtown, Nathan Cole signed the papers. The company that had made him, and nearly unmade him, passed into other hands. The press release was bland. Muted. Exactly as he wanted. No headlines. No interviews. Just a door closing. He walked the streets afterward, unburdened. Not clean. Never clean. But honest. When he returned to the annex, the coding club was already in session. Jordan waved him in, gesturing toward a new 3D printer, funded by an anonymous donation, but Nathan recognized the signature of the wiring. Clara handed him a mug of tea without comment. And at the back of the room, May stood beside a corkboard labeled "What We're Building Next." There were drawings. Notes. Ideas pinned with thumbtacks and hope. She looked over her shoulder when she saw him. He nodded once. She smiled. That spring, second story added a new section, Used Laptops, refurbished in the annex Pay What You Can. On Saturdays, kids from the coding club helped customers set up email accounts, navigate job applications, learn how to format resumes. No photos. No slogans. Just work. And every Friday evening, after the shop closed, May and Nathan sat on the front step with mugs of black tea and a radio playing music from another decade. Sometimes they spoke. Sometimes they didn't. But always they stayed. One night in late April, May leaned her head against his shoulder. I never told you what I first thought, she murmured. About me? No. About the bookstore. The night you gave me the deed. What did you think? She smiled. That I'd never be enough to deserve it. He turned his head, lips brushing her hair. You weren't, he said softly. She stiffened. Then he added, You made it enough. That's different. May didn't answer. Just reached down, laced her fingers with his, and held on. Not tightly. Just surely. And in that moment, either of them was alone. Not anymore. Not again. Because wealth wasn't always money. Sometimes it was a second chance, given freely. Sometimes it was a storefront lit against the dark. And sometimes it was simply a hand in yours, steady as truth.